Hey, well, you've been so patient going through all the other. Now it's time for the chisels. If you notice, kind of obvious, this does flat things, this kind of does round things. Well, if that's the only categories, you'd be very wrong. I usually use a gouge for just about everything, and there's some pretty good reasons, and I'll get to those in a moment. With this, you quite often will tear a lot of wood. The reason being, if I come into the side, all along both sides of this, unless I already have cut some wood down, I'm going to tear. And since this is some exotic walnut, who knows where that's going to tear. See, it's not controlled. It's not such a good idea. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use this profile. And when I come in here, I'm cutting all the way around. Okay, this is a variety of flat bottom chisels, and you can see there's a remarkable difference in all of them. You have this one has a reinforcement on the back, and that's so you can pound the tar out of it with a mallet and hopefully not damage it. It has a very large section here. Again, it reinforces it so that you don't jam the whole chisel up inside this wooden handle. And also the handle is not round, so when you set it down, it's not going to roll off your desk. That's kind of important because the concrete doesn't do that point any good. Now, you do have different thicknesses of blades. This one is pretty tough, good for abuse. This one is really tough. This one actually is taller than it is wide. This is called a mortising chisel, and it's made for prying a lot of wood out. And again, you have the reinforced larger area down here so you don't knock it through the wood. This is one I usually use for carving. It's much smaller, much more delicate, and again it has a wood handle that you can grip easy, and with this it's not going to roll around too easy. Then every once in a while, probably put it in a safe place. This is an old file. Who says you can't convert? I guess next, let me show you the variety of chisels that you might need and some of the things to avoid. As you can see by the profile, I hate to say how many in apartments I've made. It's very plain, very simple, and a lot of people have the misconception that you need all these different sizes and flavors of shapes. You really don't. When you're working on them, curves and things like that, they're never going to conform to the shape of your chisel. So why go to all the expense and effort of having 3 or 4 dozen different shapes? You're going to be not just using this edge, but I tend to use the outside from about 2 o'clock and over here about 10, 11 o'clock on the edges. You can have straight ones. Oh, and if you have a large dog, they might go ahead and decorate it so you can have a better grip on your handle. But on the other side, you can see a flat. This has to be absolutely smooth. That's one of the tricks. And you'll notice I do not use any jigs. It's all done freehand, and because I'm very careful about keeping a super sharp tip, and I'll be going into that in a minute, you don't need the jigs. And one of the tricks, of course, is having this super flat and sharp. One of the biggest problems folks have are V-tools. And one of the biggest things is trying to get rid of this little knob here at the end. And when you try to sharpen these, it can be a lot of trouble. What you do is you treat both sides as if it was 2 separate blades. And the reason you can get rid of this little extra nib that shows up on the bottom when you're sharpening, don't forget to just roll it over as you're going back and forth between the edges. Pretend like the back of my hand's a stone, and as you're going, don't forget to roll it over, and miraculously it'll stay gone. Okay, now for a quick part on the scrapers. But these you're familiar with. You put your edge on it, curl it over, and then for some unfortunate reason people will bend it as they're using it, or this way. And yeah, they work, but there's a very serious problem going on, and that you're never going to get a really smooth surface here. Why? Good question. Okay, whenever, as you're making this, you sharpen the bevel and then you round over the edge. Well, that's in effect what I'm doing is something so that it's shaped like this, and then I'm scraping it. Well, when you bend this, and you're using this and you apply pressure, well, it won't behave itself. What happens is you end up with these little tiny tears in your surface. That's the only way it can go around a curve. Let's face it, it's steel. Well, each time you have one of these little tiny tears, you're going to leave a line. To me, I'd rather not have to sand or deal with those lines. So I make my own. These can be made from just about any kind of steel that takes a little bit of abuse. The lawn trimmers. But the main thing is, these don't flex. I can put my a very honking big edge on it. And how do I bend it over? I actually use a burnisher. And you start off, of course, with the bevel, do a couple of licks, and then very slowly bring it over. Of course, I use my blacksmith's vise because I can really get a good grip on it, and I do lean on it pretty hard. The main thing is to remember not to slip and shove your thumb along it. You'll do that a couple of times, and I imagine you'll learn to avoid it in a hurry. Now, some folks do have some odds and ends to help you. They'll quite often have some gizmo that looks like this. These actually are pretty handy, and I find myself using it. You have a square peg, and these have different angles. You can play pegs with it. Stick it in here, and it's amazing how much leverage you can get back and forth. And because it's up, and I can see how much of an edge I'm curling over, well, this actually has its advantages. I'm becoming more and more enamored with this little critter. There are commercial ones, look like this. These are not, the edges are perfectly straight down here on the bottom. If you rip your finger this way, it'll cut you just like a chisel will. But these do a very good job. They're hard steel. There's nothing soft about them, and it does take a little bit of work with the buffing wheel. There are different bits that are sold, and again, you can get these. Brownells, Midway, both carry them, but certainly feel free to make your own. Yeah, it's a little intimidating when you first try it, but after you see how easy it is, and you can certainly make whatever sizes, straight, flat, big, broad stuff. This one has a slight curve to it. This one is absolutely straight. The world is whatever you want it to make it. Now there is a trick with using files. If you're using metal, and well, I guess granddaughter must have been visiting recently, is chalk. You can get this from the dollar store. It's cheap. They don't have railroad chalk anymore, so this is the next best thing. Kids use it for making diagrams on sidewalks. Fill the teeth up with it, and don't be afraid to put lots of it on. And what this is going to do, as you filing, you end up with the filing chips sometimes getting caught in the teeth. This helps prevent that. It also helps lubricate. And since no oil's involved, things don't stick so much to it. And the worst one, of course, is a rasp. And this thing with all these shark teeth on it, boy, it's very nice the way it removes wood, but you have to be really careful. The marks it leaves behind, and give yourself plenty of room down the road to remove them. Okay, now with the different kinds of files, there is so much information available on them on the internet. I'm not going to go over what double cut, what a mill file is, mill bastard, all the half rounds, things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of that information already available. Yeah, so it's very important about screwdrivers. First thing you'll notice about these two, this is one that you'll normally get in a hardware store. It has slopes on the sides, and This is what they call a gunsmith screwdriver. Very different shape. It has very, very straight sides right where the screw would fit on top of it. Now a screw slot has straight sides. They go straight up and down. So with this I can get full contact along the entire wall of that slot. Here on this one, because of the slopes of that screwdriver, I'm going to only be able to touch it at the very top. So as Archimedes pointed out with his screw, I'm already on a ramp, and the propensity of this to twist off and mar the slot is pretty darn big. With this, you can really put a lot of pressure on it without a whole lot of damage. These are called gunsmith screwdrivers, but if you remove the name gunsmith, the price drops in half, and you look for machinist screwdrivers, it's amazing the similarity. Also, if you get the screwdrivers with the replaceable bits, this type tends to be inexpensive to make, and you'll find out that you have more and more of this shape available to you. Now this is a little wide, too thick across here. A couple of quick clicks with a rat tail file, and you can make it pretty much any size you want. Okay, now along with the same vein as I was talking about the usage of chisels and the screwdrivers, the next one of course is a saw. And I've seen a lot of people take a saw and they'll just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and start complaining why the saw is dull. Especially with a hacksaw. Same thing with a file. They go back and forth very quick. Well, these all have teeth that are made in a very specific manner for a particular job. If you look at this, is a Japanese saw, and if you look at the teeth on it, they are particularly slanted in towards the bottom. They're straight on the bottom part of the teeth and at an angle on the top. That means so when I'm pulling it like this, it's supported in the top of the tooth. If I go backwards like this, I can actually run my finger across it and not cut myself. This would be the wrong direction, and what I would do is end up taking the top of these teeth, which are not supported in this direction, and curling them over. That's the same thing as making the thing dull. So if you're using any of the saws like this, have the same thing with this one. And this might be a little bit harder to see, and sometimes they do use triangles, so you can go in both directions. But a good saw, you'll notice, has a flat on one side and an angle on the other side, and that distinctly has a direction to go in. Your file is also in the same direction, and this one is, the teeth on here are fairly pronounced, and this is only made to go in this one direction, and if you make the mistake of dragging it backwards, you'll curl the tops of the sharp part over. It's dull. And unfortunately, this stuff is so hard, you'll have a great deal of difficulty trying to curl all these little teeth back. They'll probably break off, so you get to replace it. But with a little bit of care, these will serve you for quite a while.